Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jerry Bogaz. I'm an assistant director here at the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, known to its friends as NYMTC. We are the region's metropolitan planning organization. That would be the region covering New York City, suburban Long Island, and the lower Hudson Valley. And this regional council exists to plan for and make decisions on the use of federal transportation funding in the region that it's responsible for. I want to thank you all for participating in today's webinar. And please note that this presentation is eligible for 1 certification maintenance credit from the American Planning Association. You will find more information about this in the chat pod. Today we have a presentation from Empire Clean Cities and Greater Long Island Clean Cities Coalition on how the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities program can support the clean transportation transition. I just want to point out that U.S. DOE's Clean Cities program has been in existence for at least the past 20 years and has been active in our region during that entire time. Empire Clean Cities is the organization that provides Clean Cities services in New York City and the lower Hudson Valley. And obviously the Greater Long Island Clean Cities Coalition does so in suburban Long Island. Our speakers today are Joy Gardner and Rita Ebert. Joy Gardner is the Executive Director of Empire Clean Cities, as well as the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities Coalition Coordinator for New York City and the lower Hudson Valley. Rita Ebert is Coalition Director of the Greater Long Island Clean Cities Coalition. So there will be an opportunity for questions following the presentation, but we ask that you enter your questions into the WebEx chat box, and we will address them during the question and answer portion towards the end. Stephanie Brooks from our staff will be monitoring the chat pod and will order the questions. Time permitting, we'll reach as many of the questions as we can. With that as a bit of overview, I would like to now turn over to Joy Gardner to begin the presentation. Thank you all for being with us today. Joy?
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Jerry. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Brown Bag. As Jerry said, I'm Joy Gardner. I'm the Executive Director and Clean Cities Director for Empire Clean Cities. We're really excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about the Clean Cities program and some opportunities. And, you know, we're especially excited because New York and really the transportation sector as a whole is at this critical and interesting transition point. We know that the transportation sector accounts for nearly half of New York's carbon emissions. And we're seeing the effects of these emissions now more than ever on the environment, on our health, and quite frankly, on our budgets as well. Major historic action has been taken recently at both the local, state, and federal levels to help curb these emissions, and technology, as we're all well aware, is rapidly advancing, making clean vehicles, alternative fuels, and infrastructure more efficient and affordable than ever. Today, we'll talk a little bit about our Clean Cities coalitions in the downstate region, some of our local projects, as well as a few funding opportunities and some free tools and resources that are available to support that transition to clean transportation and improve air quality for New York communities. So as I mentioned, here's just a quick pie chart of which sectors are responsible for New York State's emissions. And as you can see, transportation is a big piece of that pie, as I mentioned. And then on the right side of the screen, there's a quick snapshot of the publicly accessible alternative fuel stations in New York State. This doesn't count for private alternative fueling stations that are operated exclusively by certain fleets at their depots, but just to kind of give you a sense of where we're at as a state. So a little more about the Clean Cities program. Jerry, you were very close. This year, we're actually celebrating the 30th anniversary of the program. The program has been around out of the U.S. Department of Energy's Vehicle Technology Office since 1993. And our program is really dedicated to reducing emissions and cutting petroleum consumption in the transportation sector, and helping accelerate the transition to alternative fuel and advanced vehicle technologies. There are 75 different coalitions across the country. We're in almost every state, soon to be every state. And there are actually 6 coalitions in New York State. We have some colleagues upstate in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and the Albany area. And then today we'll be talking about the downstate region. I'll talk a little bit about some of our programs in New York City and the Hudson Valley. And then Rita will talk about some great initiatives that they have in Nassau and Suffolk County. So overall, the Clean Cities program has helped to deploy over 2 million alternative fuel vehicles across the country. I think that's a pretty conservative number because we're not counting the personally owned vehicles or micromobility, which is quickly becoming part of our portfolio. And we're also we've helped to deploy hundreds of thousands of alternative fuel infrastructure, including EV charging stations, and that number also will continue to grow as more alternative federal funding comes down the pipeline. So a little bit about what the coalitions do very broadly. We'll talk specifically about local programs, but as a whole, we help to provide education and outreach to decision makers, fleets, and the general public. We offer alternative fuel vehicle and infrastructure planning support, training, and access to technical assistance. I like to say, if we don't have the answer for you, we'll find it. We have our experts at the Department of Energy, as well as the support of the national labs that we can tap into. We help to connect fleets and municipalities with alternative fuel providers, industry partners, and resources. So a lot of times we act as a matchmaker. So we will, if a municipality or a fleet is interested in a certain type of alternative fuel or vehicle, we can help make those connections. We can also help make connections across the country. So if you are interested in launching a particular project, and we know that a fleet or a municipality has done something similar in Utah or Florida, we can help tap into that Clean Cities network to connect you with those folks to talk shop a little bit about that project. We also help identify funding and incentive opportunities, and in some cases we can help with grant writing and with the voucher and incentive forms. We collect and analyze regional data. This includes costs of alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure. We also track local alternative fuel pricing that gets aggregated into a national report that's issued quarterly. And we also support electric vehicle and alternative fuel corridor planning, which I'm sure folks have heard a lot about NEVI, and alternative fuel corridors are coming online every day in the US. So, as we transition to clean vehicles, we really want to make sure that fleets and individuals are getting safely and comfortably from point A to point B, and that, along that route, they are able to feel comfortable that they can stop and recharge or refuel in the same way that we do now with traditional gas stations. So a little bit about Empire Clean Cities. We are a 501c3 non-for-profit, in addition to being a Clean Cities Coalition. We are a small but growing team, and we also operate Mission Electric, which is our electric vehicle campaign and online resource hub. In 2022, we helped our stakeholders reduce over 130,000 tons of carbon emissions. We supported partners with dozens of infrastructure and vehicle deployments. We conducted a number of outreach events and participated in many stakeholder events and panels like the one we're on today. We also participated in the U.S. Department of Energy's new Energy and Environmental Justice Initiative, which has allowed us to bring on our newest team member, Manny, who will be working with environmental justice communities to deploy a community needs assessment and hopefully support adoption of some clean transportation technologies that are specific to each community. We've also and continue to develop a partnership partnerships with community-based organizations across our region. And this, again, we're partnering with groups who are ingrained in the community and really the ones that are trusted local resources for community members. And we're there just to provide tools and resources to help them address local transportation issues. So some of our existing and upcoming programs, this isn't a complete list, but just a few highlights, and happy to dive a little bit deeper into to other programs, and I encourage you to visit our website as well. Each year we have two big annual events, our annual stakeholder meeting in Flushing Meadow, Queens, that happens each May in conjunction with the New York City Vehicle and Equipment Show. If you've not been to that event, it is an incredibly useful tool for fleets and municipalities who are thinking of adopting clean transportation or infrastructure. Last year, I think there were close to 200 different exhibitors and a few thousand folks from the tri-state area. It's a great opportunity to not have to travel that far and get a firsthand look at the technology, everything from an electric scooter all the way to a fully electric transit bus. In the fall, coming this October, we have our Clean Vehicle Festival, which happens in Union Square in Manhattan. And this is more of a public-facing event, and it's sort of an opportunity for fleets in New York City to showcase the clean vehicles that are in operation. So what we have on display are our vehicles and tools that are being used every day. And it's just a really exciting time to have folks walk by and you know, there's a giant school bus parked on the lawn, and they get a chance to we get a chance to say, you know, this technology isn't 10 years out, it's here now, and there are electric school buses operating across the city. We are going to be hosting a electric vehicle ride and drive with New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission to help showcase EV models that are available for hire vehicle drivers. We were also part of NYSERDA's New York Clean Transportation Prize projects that aim to accelerate the transition to a clean transportation future. There were over 10 prize winners across New York State and several in the downstate region. For specifically that we are part of, have started and we'll be able to share more information about those soon. But one is a first of its kind medium and heavy duty public fast charging station that will be in the South Bronx in the neighborhood of Hunts Point. There's about 13,000 truck trips every day that go through that neighborhood, and that's some of the worst air quality in the country. And so this public fast charging station that's geared towards these bigger vehicles will allow fleets to make the transition to an electric truck or bus when they're not able to install infrastructure at their depots, because as we know, space in urban areas like New York City is pretty tight. So not every fleet operator is able to install, at least not now, sufficient charging. We're working with our partner Revel to build a light-duty public fast charging hub in the Red Hook neighborhood in Brooklyn. We'll also be doing some community EV trainings as well, and there'll be a workforce development component to that. We're working with the MTA to pilot New York City's first two hydrogen fuel cell buses in the Bronx. And we'll be piloting energy as a service with a couple of fleet providers in the Lower Hudson Valley and in the Bronx. And this is for fleets who don't necessarily want to or own their assets, and there's another opportunity for them to make that transition. There'll also be a big workforce development component to that as well, and we'll be building a clean transportation job board. So more on that soon. We're working with NYSERDA to help do education outreach and scrappage verification for the Truck Voucher Incentive Program, which provides an incentive for fleets to acquire new zero-emission Class 5 through 8 vehicles. We're doing a lot of work with school bus electrification support and outreach, and we are soon will be launching a workplace charging support for both employers and employees. So that's just a little bit about what we are doing with Empire Clean Cities. And now I'd like to pass it over to my colleague Rita to talk about what's going on in Long Island. Rita?
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Rita Ebert, the Coalition Director. I have been the Coalition Director since 2007. The Greater Long Island Clean Cities was designated in 1996. We're a 501c3. It covers Nassau and Suffolk counties, and we have over 430 members of our coalition, which comprise of private companies, utilities, townships, the counties, national labs, and other organizations. Last year alone, we displaced over 17 million gallons of diesel fuel. Thank you, Joy. Also, greenhouse gas emissions was reduced by over 30,000 tons. Today, we have put on the road alternative fuel, electric vehicles, fuel economy, and off-road hybrid electric vehicles, over 10,000 of them. We have over 108 alternative fueling stations and charging stations in Nassau and Suffolk County. We raise public awareness for the need to reduce harmful emissions and the benefits of implementing alternative fuel and electric vehicles through education and outreach. Education is one of our big components that we do. We help, like I said, utilities, companies, private, the townships. Last year, we held 87 meetings, events, and workshops. This year, so far, we've held 17 events, 33 meetings, and 2 workshops. Some of the workshops we did held was EV safety and maintenance training for first responders and for the townships and any other person that needs to be trained on how to work around EV vehicles. This is a big initiative of ours. We've had biodiesel workshops, compressed natural gas, clean school bus webinars and events, electric school bus events. We do many Earth Day events. This is when we reach out to the public to show them what we're doing and to educate them. We've had webinars on EV light and medium duty vehicles. We do fundraisers and we reach out to communities. We've done a fundraiser at Citi Field with the New York Mets. We were given the Spirit Award. The Spirit Award is to an organization that helps with the environment and the people. So we were very, very pleased with it. Over the PA system, they spoke about what the Clean Cities does, and we had a table displayed. And like I said, it was a fundraiser. We do have minimum money that comes from the Department of Energy to run the coalition, so we always look to increase our funding to help offset our costs. We participate in Alt Wheels and New York City events. Alt Wheels is held in Massachusetts in October. It's a great event. I also work very closely with the American Public Works Association, the Long Island chapter. These are gentlemen that work for towns and county, and we have manufacturers come and display vehicles, and we help them identify vehicles which would be good for their fleet. In the years that the coalition has been, it's been, let's see, 17 years we've been a coalition, and in that time we've given out $10 million in congestion mitigation and air quality. That's CMAQ funding. And to this date, the first people that received CMAQ funding in 1996 are still using alternative fuels, so we're very happy. We were also a recipient of the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, which we received $15 million, and we put that into great use. We put in 5 compressed natural gas stations, 143 CNG vehicles, and one Chevy Volt. We also gave garage maintenance and upfitting training. As you know, with compressed natural gas, you just can't bring the vehicle into the building. It has to be upfitted with all kinds of technology and ventilation. We've done first responder training. We find this is extremely, extremely important. With all the new technology out there, our first responders aren't trained. And if they respond to an accident with an electric vehicle or a compressed natural vehicle, they need to know how to respond and get the person out and make everyone safe. First responder training, excuse me, was held at Suffolk Community College. We had 19 attendees, as you see in the picture. They were folks from PSCG Long Island, Suffolk County DPW, Suffolk County Police, Weston BOCES, and Stony Brook University. We keep these classes to a minimum of about 20 because it's hand-on experience. We are trying to get funding to take this on the road to the Northeast states to train people, and also here on Long Island. I think that's it, Joy. Excuse me. Next slide.
Great. Thanks, Rita. All right, so now I'm just gonna sort of transition to you know, what we do best is talking about sort of resources to help implement some of these activities. So as folks are probably well aware, the federal government passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which established a whole slew of new transportation initiatives, including the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, or NEVI. And over the next 5 years, we're I guess next 3 or 4 years left now, but the federal government has committed to providing $5 billion for zero and low emission school bus funding. So if you've not seen the recent announcement about the EPA's Clean School Bus Program, that opportunity is live, and applications are due in August. So please, if you need support, if you're working with the school district in your area that needs some funding to transition to clean school buses, please get in contact with us, and I'm happy to provide some support there. Bill also provides $39 billion for zero and low emission public transit buses and $7.5 billion for EV charging infrastructure. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law also created the Joint Office of Energy and Technology, and they've made a lot of big announcements this week and have published some great resources that I encourage everyone to take a look at. But this office administers technical assistance, develops technical programs, and executes other electrification-related programming. Building on Bill, the Inflation Reduction Act provides $369 billion to confront the climate crisis. Beginning earlier this year, it established a new federal tax credit that's available specifically for businesses to purchase new EVs and fuel cell electric vehicles. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. It also expanded the federal EV tax credit for individuals to 2032, and added a new 4,000 credit for qualifying pre-owned EVs, which is incredibly exciting. You know, California had already adopted this used EV program, and so it's great that now it's a national program. The used EV market is relatively small now, but it is going to be growing rapidly. So this provides access for folks, another avenue for folks to drive an EV. It also extended the alternative fuel tax credits and as funding support for domestic manufacturing. So as there's an increased demand in infrastructure and vehicles, we need to make sure that our manufacturing plants are equipped to meet that demand, so that we don't run into supply chain issues. So as mentioned before, this new tax credit that's eligible for businesses and tax-exempt organizations, which is key. Historically, nonprofits, colleges, those who are exempt from taxes aren't able to access some of these funds. But the tax credit is equal to or lesser to 15% for a hybrid, and or 30% if it's fully electric or fuel cell. And it covers sort of the incremental cost of the vehicle, so the cost over its gas or diesel equivalent. The maximum for light duty, 7,500, and the maximum for medium and heavy duty is up to 40,000. So this is a great opportunity if you aren't eligible, or if you didn't win some of the competitive grant programs, or if you weren't eligible because you didn't have a vehicle to scrap, for example, for some of the state programs. This is another way to help access some funding to offset some of the upfront costs of owning a zero emission vehicle. The Department of Energy's Vehicle Technology Office, of which the Clean Cities program is part of, recently announced $99.5 million in demonstration and deployment and research grants. That concept paper was due on Monday, but this is, budget, pending federal budget. This is something that comes out every year. And often they ask you to partner with your local Clean Cities Coalition. So I encourage you to reach out to Rita or I if you have ideas, or you want to partner on a future funding opportunity out of VTO. And then the EPA's Diesel Emission Reduction Act, DERA grants. These provide funding for alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure. This is an annual program, again, federal budget pending. But this is a great opportunity to access funds to replace large chunks of fleet vehicles. The deadline, so this one hasn't been released yet for this fiscal year, but we expect that literally any day. So I encourage you to be on the lookout for that. And if you are a fleet and interested in submitting a grant, please reach out to us. So a couple of other federal opportunities, and these ones are particularly geared towards government entities. So the U.S. Department of Transportation released some announcements about their MEGA program and their infra program for this fiscal year, providing $1.8 and $3.1 billion for big infrastructure projects. So this includes freight and highway and other sort of mobility-related projects that are very large scale and may not be a good fit for other federal programs that are out there right now. And then on the state level, there are some great programs as well. There is utility make-ready programs. So be it Con Edison or National Grid or PSAG Long Island, they have programs set up to help cover the incremental cost of bringing the power to a station. So when you're transitioning, particularly when you're transitioning larger vehicles to fully electric, that requires a tremendous amount of power, and a lot of locations aren't set up for that just yet. And bringing the additional power to the site can be incredibly costly. And so this is a great opportunity to help upgrade these facilities and make this possible for fleets who are interested in transitioning. This funding does not cover the cost of the charging stations themselves, but rather just the cost of upgrading the facilities. The New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program, which I mentioned earlier, and the New York Clean Trucks Program, which is this city-specific program, both use Volkswagen settlement funding, and they provide grants towards the purchase of zero emission. It was alternative fuel, but now it's purely battery electric, medium and heavy duty vehicles. The one caveat here is that fleets who are interested in taking advantage of this incentive need to have an eligible vehicle to scrap that has to be engine model year 2009 or older. And this can be a bit of a challenge for larger fleets who transition, who turn over their fleets more often than that. So both programs have recently opened up a third-party system where a fleet can purchase another fleet's older vehicle to scrap, assuming that it meets all of the eligibility requirements. And so we'll be announcing more information on that soon, and there'll be some resources available both for the fleets who are looking to apply for the voucher and for third-party fleets who are looking to sell their older diesel vehicles. New York State also has a Drive Clean rebate, which provides a sort of a point of sale rebate for up to $2,000 on the purchase of an EV or plug-in electric hybrid. And this is great because this is stackable on top of that federal tax incentive as well. New York State's DEC also has some community impact grants that are available for communities, and that's $6 million. That's currently available for community-based organizations who are interested in addressing environmental issues in historically underserved communities. So this is a great opportunity to work directly with local CBOs and partner on some clean transportation projects. And that this is not by any means a full list of every opportunity that's out there, and I really encourage you to take a look at our website or the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which we'll discuss in a second. And the Alternative Fuel Data Center outlines laws and incentives and funding opportunities on a state and federal level. So if you it's a great place to find up-to-date information. And now I'm going to pass it back to Rita to talk about some free tools and resources that are available to you to help support your transition to alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure, as well as just some interesting tools for the data nerds out there. Rita?
Thank you, Joy. It's one thing great about the Clean Cities program. We could get you information on just about anything, and then when we can't or we can't find it, we have a Tiger team at the NREL lab, and they help us with any questions. So please feel free to shoot us any questions you have. The Alternative Fuel Data Center, it's Alternative Fuel and Advanced Vehicle tool search. You can find vehicles like Joy had mentioned, what vehicle is right for your fleet, what is the range, the efficiency, also vehicle cost calculator when you're doing your fleet over. How long would it, take you to pay for that vehicle? There's also benefits and consideration with the alternative fuels, the money savings in the fuel themselves opposed to diesel. There's also case studies. A lot of times we share our success stories, and it's a great area to look to see who's doing what in the country and what's succeeding and how it's moving forward. The Alternative Fuel Station Locator, another great one. You can get an app for your phone. You can put any alternative fuel in there and electric, and it'll show you where all the stations are throughout the country and not only in New York. Strictly across country, one of the coalitions just finished a EV cross-country trip. So we were tracking her from California all the way to Rhode Island. So it's a great website to go to. Laws and incentives. They do keep updated with the laws and incentives in each state. It's a great, I can't say enough about this website. It's a great one to go and learn about things. We do locally a quarterly fueling report where we submit the prices of alternative and conventional gasoline and diesel, and it goes into a database and it tells you where in the country who's paying what for what price. Next, Joy. I'll continue. Fueleconomy.gov. This information on different vehicle models, efficiency. This is a great way if you have a fleet and you're trying to figure out what fits your fleet perfectly or the best ideas that you could come up with new technology. Emissions and cost savings, the Alternative Fuel Life Circle, environment and economy. A-Fleet is a great tool. It gives you an example of environmental and economic costs and benefits of alternative fuel. It will give you, if you said what's the difference between electric and a compressed natural gas, you could put this information and it will calculate right down to it how much it costs and what's the best for the environment and for your fleet. Heavy-duty vehicle emissions calculator builds on the fleet tool, which is consideration for scrappage. NYSERDA resources. The EV New York, Charge New York and New York incentive to get more electric cars and trucks on the road. Clean energy communities and climate smart communities. Provides resources and funding for communities that take clean energy and climate smart actions like installing EV infrastructure. And then once again, the Clean Cities Coalition, connection to a national network of fleets, alternative fuel projects. You could find any coalition in the country. If you have friends outside the state of New York or even in the state, upstate New York, you could find the local clean cities. Please reach out to them for any questions you have. It's a great, great program. I can't say enough about it. And not too many federal programs last 30 years. And like we said, we're celebrating our 30-year anniversary. Technical assistance and Tiger Team. We've had issues in the past with some vehicles, and I brought it back to the national labs and the Tiger Team, and they figured it out. And I have to say that these vehicles are still on the road. So we have great resources and people that, you know, help us out in anything we do. Joy?
Great, thanks, Rita. Yeah, so again, with the technical assistance and Tiger Teams, you know, our goal is to not only help fleets and municipalities make this transition, but we want them to be successful. So if there is ever a hiccup on the road, you know, along the road, so to speak, then we are able to tap into the national labs and DOE resources to make sure that we identify the problem and it gets quickly addressed. And then I also just wanted to quickly go back to the Evaluate New York website. This is a partnership with NYSERDA and Atlas Public Policy, and there it sort of tracks trends in electric vehicle ownership and infrastructure throughout the state. And so you're able to break it down to sort of community by community, you know, to a single zip code to see how many vehicles are registered overall, how many of them are electric, and kind of track the trends over time to kind of help narrow in on some areas that may be lacking, and kind of gives you an opportunity to figure out why some zip codes may not be accelerating adoption as quickly. And I see in the chat someone asked to share a copy of the presentation, and yes, happy to do that. Again, afdc.energy.gov is a great resource where all of these tools are outlined. So that brings us to the end. Here are the contact information for Rita and myself. So if you're in the New York City or Lower Hudson Valley area and you need assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if you are in Nassau or Suffolk County, please don't hesitate to reach out to Rita. If you happen to be outside of our territory, reach out anyways, and we can help point you in the right direction. So thank you again, and I'll pass it back to the NYMTC team for Q&A.
Okay, thanks very much, Joy and Rita. It was an excellent presentation. Really showed the broad range of activities out there. Before we get into questions, I did not point out one thing in the introductory statements about the relationship of NYMTC and its members to the Clean Cities programs over the years. And yeah, it's been 30 years. I was short, but it's pretty amazing. Certainly, Rita mentioned the CMAQ funding, which NYMTC's members have over the course of time decided to use for projects that were related to the Clean Cities programs. I think back in the day, in the 90s, there was some federal planning funds through NYMTC that were also used to support Clean Cities activities. And of course, there are discretionary grants coming out now, grant awards, through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law / Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for things like clean school buses. We just received word of an award there in New York City, and MTA received funding, discretionary funding for clean transit. So you know, our members have always been involved in these activities, and they're becoming increasingly important now, given the impetus, the emphasis on clean fuels and clean transportation. And for everyone participating, if you have questions, please enter them into the chat pod, and Stephanie Brooks will field them and convey them. I wanted to start, though, with a quick question on my own to get the ball rolling. And one of the biggest challenges it would seem that we're facing right now in terms of the transition to clean transportation is developing charging locations and fueling locations, both for private vehicles, passenger vehicles, and for commercial vehicles. Joy, Rita, could you say a little bit about what involvement the Clean Cities programs have had in that equation? And it does relate back to the NEVI program, Joy, that you spoke about and use of that funding.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead, Joy.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so we are involved at many different levels. So in some cases, I mentioned, you know, we're sort of this matchmaker, and so we're just here to be sort of an unbiased resource for what options are out there. So you know, if a fleet is comes to us and, you know, we want to transition our school bus fleet to fully electric, but we're worried about how much space we can take up, or how much you know, power is provided, then we can you know, point to them to some case studies or some providers or some resources there to help them make an informed decision. In other cases, we are more heavily involved and part of grant-funded initiatives where we're actually helping to put the chargers in the ground. So, for example, some of the Clean Transportation Prize funding winners that I mentioned earlier are bringing on 2 public fast charging stations. One of them in the South Bronx, which will be on an alternative fuel corridor. We've also, you know, worked with them. With the city to help support a recent CFI application, as well as some other partners in the state as well on their applications to help with these large infrastructure projects. And again, you know, it's as I mentioned when I was talking about the Make Ready program, power is an issue, and so also kind of thinking creatively, if it's going to take a couple of years to get power to your site, you know, kind of brainstorming different ways to address that problem in the near term. You know, electric vehicles are coming, and you know, they can't necessarily wait for the charging to catch up. So it's kind of finding creative ways. Maybe that's alternative power storage, mobile charging stations, temporary charging stations, or just getting, you know, creative about where the sites are located.
And just to add to it, if you're putting in an alternative fuel station, a compressed natural gas station, or ethanol, biodiesel, there are codes and regulations through every town, along with the county, the villages. So we will help you. I've actually gone to town board meetings and sat with people that were putting in a compressed natural gas station, just to go over and make sure all the regulations were okay with the town, and then the fire marshal. So there's a lot of people involved in it when you put in the alternative fueling station. So we will help you walk through every, you know, every avenue of that. So, you know, never feel like you can't do something, because we're here to help you.
Thanks for that. Stephanie Brooks, I'm not sure I've seen any questions in the chat pod. Can you confirm that?
Not at this time, not yet, no.
Okay, so I will ask a second question then. And again, we encourage the participants, if you have any questions, to just type them into the chat pod, and we'll get them asked. So the other target that's been a target for several years now has been fleet owners, and particularly local municipal governments that own and operate fleets of vehicles. And of course, just in the NYMTC planning area, there are 200 municipalities, plus or minus, one of which is New York City, obviously. But that includes all the municipalities in the Lower Hudson Valley and suburban Long Island. How have you approached municipalities? Have you worked with a lot of them in terms of talking about conversion of their fleets and so forth? And how much of your work is focused on local municipalities now?
I'll take a first jab at it, Joy. We've worked very closely. Our coalition started with a person from way back when it was Keyspan and the town of Hempstead. We work very closely with our large townships and all the little towns and villages. We educate them a lot. I constantly ask, I call them, email them with any kind of funding opportunity. Just about all of our townships and the local villages, I have updated lists, and I keep them informed of technology through email and also any funding opportunity. Right now, we're working with Nassau County. Nassau County is looking to convert their fleet into EV, and also Suffolk County. Suffolk County was part of the EV training, and we're helping them by showing what vehicles they could replace with EV, what's not really, like heavy duty. There are some that have little niches in them. So we work very closely with the counties and the towns on Long Island, and we're very proud of the work they've done so far.
Thanks, Rita. Gordy, do you want to add to that?
Sure. We work really closely with New York City, with the city agencies, both DCAS that operates the fleet, as well as New York City and DOT, which operates a lot of the infrastructure that the fleets move around on. We've got a picture here of New York City Department of Sanitation's first ever fully electric street sweeper. And this has been really great. They're really pioneers in the adopting electric vehicle technology, and so as often as we can, we try to showcase the work that they're doing, so other fleets can see that this technology is proven, because they really they put these vehicles to work. We are a resource, so we try and keep funding opportunities and resources for fleets as updated as possible on our website, and then our biweekly newsletter. So if you are a fleet on the line in our territory and you need support, I encourage you to reach out, and we'll see how we can help you. And if you aren't signed up for our newsletter, it is a great sort of resource of local activities and local opportunities. I also just wanted to pitch NRail, the National Energy Renewable Lab that Rita and I have mentioned a few times. They have a new project called Clean Energy to Communities, C2C program. Some of you may have gotten the email from NYMTC. Thank you again for Jerry and team for sharing that about their EV infrastructure cohort. That opportunity has closed, but there will be more opportunities like that in the future. They also have a rolling opportunity for communities, for municipalities to apply to their expert match program. So even just beyond transportation related projects, you have an opportunity to get free technical assistance for up to 60 hours over a couple-month period. So if there's a specific project you can get attached to an expert. If it is transportation related, it's likely that you'll be matched with a Clean Cities Coalition, as well as a lab representative. If it is solar or building efficiency related, you'll be matched with an expert in that field. So a great resource for local governments to take advantage of. And again, if you are a municipality on the line and there's anything we can do for you, please reach out.
Great, thank you both. Still nothing in the chat pod, so we have time for one more question, and I guess it may be mine. Stephanie, can you confirm that?
That's right, except I just put the AICP certification maintenance credit link again in the chat in case anyone didn't see it the first time.
Great, thank you. Stephanie. So my last question has to do with hydrogen fuel cells. So Troy, you mentioned working with the MTA on hydrogen fuel cell buses, and certainly fuel cells have been out there as sort of a future objective for quite some time. So it would be good to hear, Troy, a little bit about the development process for the fuel cell buses and how you're working with the MTA, and also for both of you, what are your thoughts on fuel cells, and do you see them being piloted in any other locations in our region?
Sure. So, this project, for those of you who aren't aware, there are some restrictions around hydrogen and propane in New York City. So they are not allowed over some of the bridges and tunnels. And this has been a restriction for quite some time. And so this particular pilot is operating on a depot, a specific depot, Gun Hill Road, in the Bronx, where that isn't an issue. So they'll be fueling at an MTA depot and then going on a few specific routes. But this is incredibly exciting for the region because of those bans. It really kind of has restricted widespread adoption of hydrogen fuel cell, which is incredibly safe and efficient alternative fuel for particularly for heavy duty vehicles like transit buses. And so we're hoping that through a successful pilot that will open the doors for potential rule changes and lifting of restrictions, which might allow then for continued widespread adoption as well. And that, there's also great opportunities there in terms of, in addition to being used as a as an alternative fuel, it also is a great opportunity for additional alternative power when we're talking about power creation on sites that don't have the available power for widespread EV adoption, or at least not in the near term. So it's kind of a way to help support grid adoption as well. This particular pilot, and I can drop a link in the chat for those who are interested in learning more. It's still very much in the early stages. So the infrastructure itself will be mobile, and again, it's just a pilot to see how it works, and our role in it is largely community focused, and so we're doing a lot of outreach with a few partner CBOs and with the MTA to talk to folks about hydrogen and talk to them about any concerns there may be, and provide some resources for the community that will be seeing these buses in action and taking rides along their daily route.
And if I could just add to it, we had an event at the town of Hempstead with the fuel cell. Toyota brought in a tractor, and the town supervisor came out. We did a whole big thing about how safe it is with the fuel cell. And one thing that we've stressed, that tractor trailers can travel all on Long Island with it. Like Joy said, they can't go through the tunnels or the bridges, but you certainly could take a ferry. And that's one thing that we were helping promote, the tractor trailers going out of Long Island and taking the ferry over to Connecticut. So it's another source of getting to Long Island without going through the bridges and the tunnels. And like Joy said, this is a new, the new part of it. And we're just trying to get the word out for companies to use the hydrogen fuel cells. It's a great technology, and there's always, where there's a barrier, we could overcome it somehow, and we just have to work on it. How are we going to do it? So we're not coming through the city. We're not going over the bridges or tunnels. You could take the ferry. So transportation for big companies can still happen on Long Island using that.
Great, thank you both on that interesting area of development. So it turns out there is one question in the chat pod, so I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, but I will underscore that this will be the last question because we're almost at time. Stephanie, go for it.
Yes, so a chat just came through. Can you elaborate on the standardization of the charging stations? So basically, so that any electronic vehicle can use any charging station.
This is one of those cases where I am not the expert, and we can get you some resources for that. But recently, maybe yesterday actually, the Joint Office, along with partners at NREL, published a study on the sort of best practices for building a national charging network. And this includes some information about standardization of EV charging ports. As I'm sure a lot of folks know, Tesla supercharge stations are piloting, becoming open for other non-Tesla vehicles, which is a huge win for the EV community, as Tesla has a pretty extensive charging network across the country. And now this opens up huge possibilities for other owners as well. So I'm going to drop the link to the Joint Office report that has, again, more information on standardization of charging ports and some sort of lessons learned and best practices for moving forward.
Yes, and also that, like Joy had mentioned, that the Tesla, right now there's an extension cord that will fit from a regular EV to a Tesla charging. Speaking about standardized charging stations, we also need standardized in the high voltage cable in the car. There is no nothing in legislation that says it has to be orange or yellow. These are things that we also work on for the safety of everyone, first responders and even people in general that work on these vehicles. You know, some manufacturers have a blue cable, some have an orange. There is no standard on high voltage cables. So not only do we work with our members of the coalition and people on Long Island, we actually go to DC and speak about these issues that are very important. Also labeling vehicles, alternative fuel and electric vehicles. You don't know what's what on the road if there's not any kind of labeling. So these are issues that we do in government, whether it's New York State or the federal government. So we're constantly saying what's needed, what does the public need, how are we going to fix this? So thank you for that question about standardizing.
That's an excellent question. All right, so Joy, Rita, thank you so much for sharing all this information. This is certainly a topic that's of the moment, to say the least. And it certainly is reinforcing that you all and the Clean Cities program are out there trying to wade through all this with working with government agencies and with local municipalities and with the general public. That's a very, very positive thing at this point in time. So on behalf of NYMTC and its members, thank you so much for your time to talk about this. We will be having additional brown bag sessions throughout the balance of the year. So we ask folks to look in their announcements and on our website for upcoming topics. Again, thanks to you both for your time today, and thanks to everyone else for participating. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.